and that this is really meant for the people who are wanting to do a deeper dive and really finesse their expertise. And for that matter, their war stories. I think having war stories that you can share with people is as powerful as understanding the nuances with ID, and just, as a mechanism to stay on our game ourselves so that we can give our very best, amongst the people that we interact with each and every day. So thanks for being on the call. It's, fun to have you here. This is number 36 for the year. So, it's pretty cool. And I know a number of you have been on every call. So
it's 38, just to.
Yeah.
What did you say?
You can't have 36 twice.
It's 38.
38, is it?
Yep.
I'd like everyone to, it's Ian's last day today, everybody. So
I'll just disappear now.
must have missed
Ian,
it.
we count on you. We count on you for counting.
Well,
right,
technically Paul's right, because he's done 36. Greg did too, so there's 38. So there we go. Everyone's right. Everyone's right.
Good recovery.
I'll go quiet now.
Yeah. All right, I'm just going to share my screen so you can see where we're at. Let me see here. I'm going to show a couple of slides first up. So you can see last week we had the interview with Mark Kaplan, December 2 and 3. Today is the masterclass. We have one more webinar next week, which is for everybody. And then we'll have a break through to the 20th and 21st of January, which I'm sure certainly in Australia, it's our big summer break. So all the Aussies will appreciate that. And I'm sure our Americans will be keen to catch up again by the time we come back on January 20 and 21. And we do another public webinar then, and then we go into the interview with Trevor Martinez on the 27th and 28th of January. So that's the roster at the moment. In terms of today, for the masterclass, I just want to check in with everybody. So we've got, we'll do a quick peak performance check-in, and then a debrief on the interview last week. If anyone has anything they'd like to ask or share, or how it might have impacted them, we'll make a few minutes for that. And then we'll get into the masterclass problem solving. That's the plan for today. And I just thought I'll just stop sharing for now so we can
stop sharing.
So we can maybe take stock of anything on people's minds for the problem solving. Do we want to just do up a little inventory if there's questions or issues on people's minds that they would like? We have some rolling over from previous weeks, but if there's anything on people's minds, I might just get you to capture them, and then we can make sure we cover them off. Has anyone got anything on their mind they particularly like to raise? Greg?
Something from yesterday with the team, the boss being 3746 and all the rest of his team being high purple down yellow. And it was a good day. But one of the guys asked this question saying, we're a medical facility which has very, very consequential things about our work. How could his drive be charged running us and looking after us? And it was just a brilliant question. It was a door, a big gate I just opened and went in. And I wanted to share it with you about what you think your response would be, and then what my response was. And I think it's an interesting conversation about any drive can do anything, but you need strategies.
Yeah, great. Let's get into it. I think I actually had a topic myself on drive versus behavior, a little more jovial than that one, but it would fit in that category. We could easily cover that, Greg. Judy, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yes. I have been dissecting my ID report. I have read it many times, and I have not solved any of my problems yet. So I've been dissecting it. And I've been looking at each area and really paying attention to it, and paying attention to how I'm feeling. And that comes from your performance evaluation every week, Paul.
Yep.
When you ask us to do that. And I've been extremely vigilant, observing. And I've noticed one of the areas of my profile is that I don't do well with interruptions.
Yes.
And so I've been looking at that, and last night I don't know what this means for me, but this is what I observed, is that when I'm watching something that I'm interested in, which could be similar to when I'm working on something that I'm very interested in and somebody interrupts me. But when I'm watching something and a commercial comes on, I can feel the stress in my body of that interruption.
Of the commercial break.
I'm sorry?
Of the commercial break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm watching that and really interested in it. And then here comes this, commercial about something that I did not request and probably have no interest in. And I just noticed that last night in my, that's the most recent thing that I have noticed.
That is gold. That is gold. So when I was saying before about having war stories, I mean, I've never heard that before. But when you talk to someone who's a 70 in a drive, like Judy is here in Complete, this is the type of intensity what we're talking about, that, we can talk about interruptions, but most of us wouldn't think about even a commercial break can be an interruption for some people. When you are as intense in that drive as Judy. Judy, thank you so much for sharing that, because that is just a gold example of your ID playing out.
So here's my challenge for you, Paul.
Uh-oh.
Okay, now I've given you the gold. How much do you want to pay me for it? Or, what can I do with that?
What do you want to do with it? Well, maybe so we don't get too sidetracked. Let's get into it when we get into the call. Maybe you think about it, but depends what you want to do with it.
I don't know. And I was just teasing you about that,
Well, it's for the class. I mean, I'm always happy to share my views, but this is a class, and I really would encourage everyone to contribute to, your request there. That's really cool. But I mean, even if we don't take it any further, just what you've shared already is really, it's fun, but it's really insightful around what the nuances and the intensities do mean for each drive. Yeah, beautiful. Anybody else? Okay, so let's, with the peak performance check-in today, why don't we go around the room and just ask people to share their number. You don't need to explain why, but there's only, I can see one screen today. So that's enough people. We could just quickly do like a pulse, and we could just get a sense today of where we're each at, which means you have to go off mute. So I'll just go by the order of my screen, and you can just get a sense. Ian, you might write the numbers down just so we have a sense of what does it look like for this particular group. And I'll just ask you to be honest if at the end of the sharing of the number you'd like to elaborate, either because it's a particularly high number and there's something behind that, or there's a lower number, or you want to get some help from the team. Of course, we'll go there. But let's start by just sharing the number. And Ian, you're up first, but you are on mute.
I'm 8. Thank you.
8. Good on you. Greg.
Well, then I'm 9.
Okay,
David, you get it. You know what I just did.
David.
8.
8. Good on you. Mike.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm probably a 6 at the moment, and
Okay.
that would be partly because the improviser is working with lots of things to do, so I'm stretched, but a lot of complexity, which I'm finding quite challenging. So that's sort of bringing me from an 8 to a 6.
Okay. Thank you. Susan.
I'm a 6 as well, and the reason is I'm just upgrading where I want to be. So yeah, just feeling a little bit dispersed.
Okay, good. Judy.
skip me for a minute. I was focusing on everybody else.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Okay, Joe. What about you, Joe?
I'm a 9. I'm with Greg. I'm a 9 today.
Good on you. Alona.
I'm an 8.
8. Good on you,
And a
Alona.
half.
Amanda.
Probably 5 or 6 today.
Okay. Susie. Are you on mute, Susie?
Hi, I'm a 10.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Wow. Steve. You're on
train.
mute, Steve.
No, Steve's on the train, so he's
he's on the train. Okay.
Yeah, so he's an 8 though. He's chatting.
Oh, he's in the chat. I should look at the chat.
Yep.
Amy, what are you? You're on mute too. Okay, can't hear.
She may not actually be there, Paul. She runs backward and forward getting the school run done.
Problem. So. And Gail?
I'm 10, Paul.
Oh, wow. Good on you, Gail. Good on you. Who else have we got? And myself, I'd say I'm a 9 today. I'm a 9 today. Judy, what if we come back to you now? What would you say
8.
your score is?
8.
8. Okay. So, firstly, thank you everyone for sharing. I mean,
Tracy and Grant.
Oh, Trace. Sorry, Trace.
And Leonie.
To a different row.
It's all right. I didn't want to go anyway. My first reaction was 8 and my second was 6. So I'm not sure which one. My head says 8 and my energy says 6. So let's go with 7.
Okay.
and Grant's there as well.
Yeah, 9 for me. Thanks, Paul. And Ian, thank you.
Thank you. I must have skipped a row. I know what happened. My screen changed around. That's what happened.
People just came in as well because we've got Leonie, Mark, and Richard as well now as well.
And we still need to go back to Judy, right?
We've got Judy. Judy's an 8.
Judy's an 8.
Great. Sorry, I missed that.
So for those of you who just joined, we're just doing a quick pulse on the peak performance indicator, which is on the scale of 0 to 10, 10 being you're really in stride and, a 1 or a 2 being your way out of stride. What number would you say you are today? You don't have to explain why. We're just asking what number pops up for you. So, Mark, what would you say your score is?
Oh, probably 8, 8.5.
That's good. And Leonie, what about for you?
Yes, I'm an 8.
8. And Richard?
Yeah, I'll say 8 too, Paul.
Okay, good. Has anyone got anything they'd like to share about their score? Mike explain why. Mike and Susan explained their scores. Has anyone got anything they'd particularly like to share as to why it's really high or anything else?
Hey, Paul, I'm happy to jump in.
Thanks, Grant.
I think I told you I was a 9. Had a tough couple of weeks. My whole family got diagnosed with COVID a couple of weeks ago, about 10 days ago. Massive transmission rates over here in the US, as you know, and Arizona is probably one of the top states at the moment. So it only takes one interaction with the community and next thing you bring it into a whole family. So really unusual. My wife and daughter first got diagnosed and I took my 2 boys to get tested and my 2 boys tested positive and I tested negative. So I've been quarantining in quarantine, if that makes sense. From my whole family, wearing a mask around the house, sleeping in my own room, no interaction with them other than talking at a distance. So it's been a really unusual exercise, but my 9 is because I feel very blessed that they've had very low, mild symptoms, and you would have heard the news. There's some really tragic stories about losses that families have had with COVID. So I feel very blessed that we've managed to get through it fairly unscathed. Thanks.
That's good. Wow, it's just incredible the difference between what's happening over there and what's happening in Australia. It's remarkable what we're experiencing. Thanks for sharing, Grant. Anybody else?
Paul, I'll share.
Thanks, David.
About 6 weeks ago now, what I'm intrigued by with myself is that I fell off the roof about 6 weeks ago. So I missed one session. But what I'm intrigued by is that I feel as though I never fell below about a 6. Because even though I wasn't feeling well, everybody around me was just so amazing. I was so grateful for the fact that even though I cracked two ribs and fractured 7 vertebrae and a great big puncture into my back that bruised my left lung, and I was in hospital and in bed, it gave me a challenge. You know, it was, I had to live up to it, and I just wasn't prepared. I was incapable of actually saying, I'm not feeling well. You know, it was just a matter of, well, okay, what am I going to do with this? So I was actually quite fascinated by how, I guess, so strongly my ID played into my situation.
Well, so that's really good that you share that, because I've had people over the years say, well, I'm really down, my number's low because, of something like that's happened, and I've often wondered, does your number need to drop down just because that adversity, if you like, has happened to you? Or is there a way to deal with the adversity as an 8 or a 9 out of 10 and get through it really well? So I think you really show that. I've been through a bit of that myself the last few years, and I've surprised myself. I remember when, a simple story, for example, is when my father passed away, and it was something I dreaded almost my entire adult life. And yet I found myself really still saying on our team calls that I'm an 8 and a 9. I'd hear myself say it. I'm like, but your dad just died, but I was so fulfilled by the way he died and the way he left, the legacy he left us. And, Greg, I still remember things you saying about your father on his deathbed that I have sort of said in my head, when it happened to my own dad. And, I've got so many positives there. And I thought, wow, it really is possible. I wasn't fooling myself. I was just surprised at how I was reacting. So I think it really is doable, but the sort of corollary of that story that you shared is, how has your recovery been because you've been a higher number? Have you recovered quicker than was expected, or has the recovery been something that's been interesting for you as well?
No, I think I haven't recovered anywhere near as quickly as what I'd like to. Of course, all the medicos are absolutely thrilled, and yes, I'm up and about, and I'll be very quiet for the next few months at my age. But yeah, my recovery is going well. Psychologically, I'm good. I'm completely and totally refocused on the business. I realize, and I'm not being dramatic, but I realize that I could quite easily have died, or that with the fall, or that I could have been physically or mentally disabled. And I actually asked myself the question, well, how would I feel if one of those things had happened? And I realized that my journey in life just I hadn't lived into my journey in life yet. So there were some things I had to do. And so it's a little bit like, okay, foot on the accelerator. Let's make these things happen. So it's been, in a way, it's been quite exciting.
Well, and listening to you, I mean, for someone with your ID, everything about it has become a positive for you, or you've turned it into that. And look at your ID. I mean, that works for you. So there's no question that your recovery is going to be better than it would have been had you been in a more sad and sort of depressed, negative state, So, I mean, I think it just shows the power of self-awareness, of that you even knew to go there, number one, and that you knew how to go there and stay there, so kudos to you, David. Awesome. Thanks for sharing it.
Yep, a pleasure.
Paul, it's Gail here. If I could add into that, every single time I fell over and broke 2 elbows, I was wandering around with both my elbows in slings, and every time I do something, or I have a procedure or something, which isn't very often, I'm usually pretty healthy, the doctors all say you've made the world record in recovering. And I'm sure it's about my ID, because I just sort of, Bethany said, someone said something, oh, I hope I didn't upset your mum. She said, no, nothing ever upsets my mum. It's like water off a duck's back. She wouldn't even know you said it. And that is how it is. When something goes wrong, I just fix it. It's kind of, and I know it's my ID, and I know it's the positivity, because it's very hard for me to see a negative. And if I do, I quickly turn, so I'm positive again.
That's wonderful, Gal. Awesome. Thank you. It's interesting, isn't it? How, you've got such a resilience and again, self-awareness to know to just brush it off and stay really positive. And yet I can see, I'm thinking of someone like Amanda, with your ID, I can see a doctor or a physio or something saying, but Amanda, to get better, you've got to do A, B, C, D, and you've got to be really diligent with it. And that type of ID would absolutely do all the things that, you've been asked to do. It's very compliant, very thorough. When I heard Judy say before, I've been, sort of reflecting very thoroughly on my ID. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you have with a completer saying that, that what they're saying is they've stayed very focused on that over time. And so that's a real ability. So as Steve saying in the chat, our ID does affect how we manage illness and how we manage recovery. And in the healthcare area, I've often thought, I've used it for myself and with my children about how we manage, the dealing with any type of illness. Even my dad, when my dad wasn't well, I remember changing things around to suit his ID. So I think it's very relevant and very helpful. It helps people get through it, both the people going through the illness as well as the people around them, the more they stay in stride. And you can do it in stride. I think that's really the message coming from this little conversation today.
Hi, Paul, if you don't mind me sharing something. So just the reason I said mine was probably a 5 or a 6. It's funny because we had great news last week. We bought our first home, so we're very excited. But it happened so fast that I'm still trying to process it. And I feel bad that when we won at auction, I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't like super excited because literally we've been from one Saturday to the other. We saw this place, we got our finance approved, we reviewed the contract, and we were at auction and we did it. And at the end of it, my husband, who's similar to Joe's ID, he's 3728. Yep. He was, super excited. And I'm like, hang on, what just happened? Like, did I do my research? Did I look at enough comparable sales? Is this right? Did we pay the right money? Like, are we going to move? Is it going to work? And so I feel really bad that, I couldn't really enjoy the moment. And I'm still kind of like, after a few days, then I'm like, yesterday I said to him, you know what? We bought a house. That's so great. I can't believe it. And he's like, yeah, it's been a few days. Like, join me on the celebration. So I'm just sharing because, it was opposite to what David was saying. Something bad happened and how he actually feels really good and in stride. The opposite for me, something really good happened. And I just feel like it just threw me completely.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. It's another great story. I'm glad you shared that because there's just this assumption out there that, when someone wins at auction, of course it's happiness and it's celebration, but not only is there not that for some people, to your point, there can almost be a guilt that follows that you weren't as happy and as celebratory as what your husband or, other people around you were. So these are the nuances that I'm thrilled are coming out of, the session like this today. That's what the masterclass was all about. The good news is that because of your ID, you warm up over time. And so what will happen is you will keep the flame. It's like your husband lit the flame of excitement and celebration, but you will keep it going for longer than what he ever would have. And so maybe a way for you to think about the positivity and the joy and all of that you bring, like that might help from a guilt point of view, is you're like the big log and he's like the kindling, and so he lights up really quickly, but he's a fast burn. Whereas you take a little longer, you're burning faster because he lit it. So you probably would have stayed longer in, pondering mode, but because he's lit the fire, you'll grab on faster, but you will keep it going. There'll be like a house warming. There'll be things down the track that you just keep that fire alive, and he will milk so much more excitement out of it because of you. And maybe that's a different approach you could take, that, you know, just acceptance of where you're at. And honestly, although I'm not the same as your husband, from an ID point of view, I'm somewhat similar in terms of the fast burn, you know. And if you just shared your vulnerability of like just how you feel, just even meeting him there like that is enough. He would love that, and it would connect you, and away you go.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Anything? Yeah, Judy.
After Gail shared, and I've heard her say this time and time and time again, and I'm so jealous. I was going to say envious, but it's not a big enough word. I'm so jealous of how she just able to maintain that attitude. So maybe somebody like her could help me with one of the things in my profile, which is making mountains out of molehills. So that's an idea that, just because I, you know, whatever it is, it gets blown up in my world.
Yep.
And even a little thing, a little like the commercial break.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what? It's over in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But I could feel it in my body.
Yep.
And
is there someone else on the call who is a completer that can deal with the keeping things in context? Then, like, maybe feels what Judy feels, in terms of you can feel the change in your energy when something interrupts you, or when, you know, you can potentially blow something out of proportion. But have you developed some type of mechanism, like we were hearing from David and Gail before, for how they deal with what could have been negative, they turned into a positive? Is there someone who's got the complete drive who can say, well, here's how I deal with an issue so that I keep it in check and it doesn't blow out of proportion?
Hi, Judy. One idea, just on the interruptions part that you were saying, we have a team of 10 people in our office, and I'm responsible for managing them. So my day is constantly being interrupted. So how I've learned to deal with that is to plan for the interruptions. So if I need uninterrupted time, I work from home a morning and I tell everyone I'm not coming in and I'm only going to be available from 12 p.m. But if I'm in the office and I know everyone needs help or whatever, then it's in my to-do list or on my plan that for between 12 and 3 p.m., I'm planning for the interruptions, so that, you know, I welcome the interruptions. So maybe that's one idea, because otherwise, you know, interruptions are part of life, and it just, even though we don't like them, we have to live and welcome them, I think. But yeah, that's just one tip.
And Amanda, what do you do if you don't have, you know, if you didn't plan for an interruption and you get interrupted and get thrown? What helps? Like, I guess even like buying the house, you know, what do you do to then not have it get blown out of proportion?
Well, with my ID, I just take some time on my own and process everything and go for a walk and just I just try to take a deep breath on the moment and just leave some things aside and focus on what needs my attention in that moment. But I don't know. I'm not sure that works the same way. Okay. I do struggle. And last week was really difficult. My parents were also got COVID in Brazil, so it was a really emotional week for me. So I don't have many good strategies, Judy, when things go off plan. It's really.
I wonder whether, Steve, you might. I have a feeling you have some insight here in terms of what you choose to focus on. You know, like, because I think you can either let the little pebble that's sort of happening become the bigger issue, or you can step back and focus on a bigger picture. But Steve, I think you do something like that. I'm interested to hear what you would say.
It might be hard for him to talk, Paul. He mentioned he was on the train earlier.
Ah, that's right.
Which is why I was putting into. But maybe even I can pick up on that. I mean, for me, and I suppose I've got a similar idea to Steve as well. It is around focusing. Like what I do is going, what do I have to get done? What are the priorities? Like so I very much go to my verify drive in terms of prioritize, and then I just move things and shuffle things around. It is a real prioritizing, and then go. The other thing that I think is really helpful, and this might actually help Judy as well, is plan the time of the day where you do have, it's a bit like Amanda when she has that downtime. I know I have downtime every morning, and I actually keep it quite sacrosanct. I take the dog for a walk, and that's my downtime, thinking time and planning time. And that's every morning, 6:45, do that religiously every day. And I really try, I do keep it that nothing else fits into that. So when I've got that time aside, even if I'm really stressed today and I'm like, I don't have time, I know I've got that time tomorrow morning. I've got that time that I've put aside, it's mine, and that's when I'll do it. Even just planning to have that time can be quite liberating.
Yeah. No, that's helpful.
Can I offer this? I want to see I don't know if it's going to work, but I have a thought. Everyone gets an emerging unwanted friend knock on the door in their own mind, meaning, oh my God, dread, fear, worry, what you're talking about, getting overwhelmed by shit. And so one of the things I've done over the years with people is said, imagine that feeling, the feeling's real, know the feeling's real, that feared, scared, that your midbrain's firing, that's real. But what you're assigning it to isn't. Like what you're thinking is the problem is probably never really the thing. It's just that ancient childlike thing going, ah. And I have this game I play, metaphor is you go, oh, as if the feeling was a little kid. It walked up to you, go, I'm sad. And you go, I know, sweetheart, you're sad. Now, come on, we're going to go do the dishes. Come on, we're going to go do this meeting. And you take that sad kid with you and let them watch you get back to life. But you don't feed that. You don't get sad with the kid. When a kid says, I'm hurting, mommy, you go, me too. I'm hurting too. Help me. We just go, I know, sweetheart. Come on, let's go. And you take your sad with you. I don't know if that works for you up completes, but it's like, don't push it away. Don't fight it. Don't just play with it. Like say, come on, let's go. And then go do something else.
That's a good idea, Greg. I think that there's a couple of things, just being aware of what you're feeling in the moment, respecting that, and finding the right way to express that. So one thing that helps me as well is if I'm having an issue at work or something really difficult, I take a moment and I actually have written down some horrible problems that we've managed to solve in the past. And I read through that and I'm like, okay, we've been through that. We're going to get through this one. So it's okay. It's going to be all right. Let's do it. And then I just need that moment on my own. I'll read something and I get myself back on track. And if I still, as Greg said, if I'm feeling sad or angry or whatever, I don't ignore that, but I just don't express in the moment. I just keep myself in there, and then it might be that I need to go for a walk later on the day, or I go to the gym, or I express that feeling somewhere else, like what Greg was saying, like you just try to separate the two things in the moment, not to lose control and not let your mind and emotions take over.
I think it's a really great discussion, and Greg, I think your strategy is brilliant. When I think even last week with Ange, I was interviewing. I mean, she's 7553, and so the 5's not anywhere near as strong as some of the people on this call as a completer. But she was like freaking out about, first of all, what I didn't tell you all last week was that's the first time she's ever been on camera. Like she has put it off, and Mark said to me, good luck with getting her to do it. I said, I'll get her to do it. Anyway, she did it. And as she walked out the door with all her notes, which she hardly used, or didn't use, she was just like, I don't know why I get myself so worked up about that. You know, I actually really enjoyed it. And it's funny because I said to her, Greg, to all of you, I have a strategy. The next day I was in the gym with her and I said, I actually have a strategy for you, which I think mirrors what you're saying, Greg. I said, if that was one of your kids that was doing that interview with me, what would you have said to that child? Because there is no frigging way you would have said, yeah, you're nervous and blah, blah, blah. And I said, now, on the other hand, if your kids were watching you and saying, Mum, you're our role model, we look up to you, and you're now demonstrating to your kids the possibilities in life, how would you have done that interview? And she said, oh my God, I would have been so confident and gone in. So it's all around the stories you're telling yourselves. And I think to Greg's point, honor the feeling, you know, like I think Judy I thought it was very astute of you, Judy, to even recognize you had a shift in energy. You know, that like you often see that, like a phone call comes in and you feel your energy change straight away and you think, haven't even taken the call yet, but it's just what I'm imagining we're going to be talking about, or imagining, but it's all the imagination, not the reality of it. And then there's the reality. And I think just distinguishing, which Greg's saying, between the feeling and what you choose to do with the feeling, is really where the power comes from, so you don't blow it out of all proportion. But I also just want to acknowledge a comment that I saw Gail made in the chat that I think is, I haven't heard it expressed this way before, but it's really powerful. We talk about making mountains out of molehills, and she talked there about, yeah, but the opposite can also be true, where you make a molehill out of a mountain, and it can be really quite belittling and demeaning to other people. And I've seen it many times where someone with a strong, you know, improvise, avoid complete ID, someone brings them a big challenging problem, and they go, oh, that's easy. You just do, and in the, oh, that's easy, you just do this. It makes it sound like, you know, the person who spent their whole weekend trying to figure this thing out has been stupid or didn't get it, or, you know, wasted their time. And it's not that it's necessarily that easy. It might take you a lot to get through it as well, but you approach it from a place of, oh, that's easy. All you've got to do is, you know. So I think there's a great message here about the feelings that you have and what you choose to do with them. Is really, the more self-aware you are, the more you can stay in, not in control, but stay in stride with, you know, how you deal with those things.
That's how I we're talking earlier a bit about other workshops about, I can, you, Paul, yourself, you're surrounded by drama in a sense, like you fall off a roof, for heaven's sakes. Who wants attention there, eh, Rick, Dave? And so we have these things around us which are a 4 or a 2 or a 3, but we're inside we're going, you know what? I'm dealing with it, and this is, you're supposed to be sad at a funeral, and yeah, it's okay. And I think we're not buying into we're acknowledging the truth of it. We're not buying into the story around it, you know, and it's the story that drags us down, and it's the justice, you know, the judgment on it, and the thoughts, the way we think about it. When you just go back into it, you go, oh, well, I do this, now I'll do that. And then all of a sudden, when you're in action, you're back up to 9 and 10 because you're doing something about it. Right. I mean, that just could be my big 8 talking like it loves to talk, but that's how I see it.
Well, I think there's something about always acknowledging it, right? And Paul, I remember I don't even know what I'd say. Some feedback I got from you like 20 years ago, where you're like, that whole piece, I'm an 8 in improv. I was like, oh, it's simple. You just do this. And you're like, if you just acknowledge, wow, that must be really hard, or wow, that must be really challenging. I think for me, just taking a moment with myself, my family, my friends, just to acknowledge and honor it, and just be like, yeah, that must be really tough. Just takes, and I think it's almost the opposite for the other drives, is I want to go straight into action, but I need to stop, honor and acknowledge it, and then move to action. And I think the other drive spends too much time honoring and acknowledging it, and are we moving into action quick enough, right? And I love this saying that a chiropractor gave me years ago, which was like, feel the feelings, but don't let them become you. Right? And sometimes we think like, I feel scared, you know, and we say, I am scared, which is all of us being scared, as opposed to I feel scared, which is an emotion that it's not who we are. It doesn't become us. And I think even like when we make mountains out of molehills, is it sometimes of like just feeding into Greg's point, the thoughts and everything. So feel the feelings, but don't let them become you. Right? And I am scared versus you know, I feel scared or I feel upset or I feel angry versus I am angry, which kind of encompasses all of who you are.
Really cool.
The other one, I wonder, you know, when Judy asked when we first started the dialogue about when she said, what can I learn from Gail in terms of like not making mountain out of molehills? One of the things that I'm not sure if it helps Judy, but I love the idea of like switch the what ifs. So if you're like, well, what if this and what if this and what if that, and they're all like negative what ifs, like all the concerns or ramifications or what have you, what if you switch those what ifs to like, what if this goes well? What if this is amazing? What if this is a positive impact? What if I love my new home? What if we like raise our kids there? What if like, so instead of the what ifs being like, what if this goes wrong? It's like, what if this goes right? And kind of making that bigger as opposed to making the other things bigger.
We have a simple story. Laura, my daughter, and I have had this little sort of a joke for, she's 36, so probably for like 30 years almost. I was hanging some washing out one time and she came and she goes, Dad, why are you doing that? It might rain. And I said, it might be sunny. And it turned out really sunny. And we've just used that as this metaphor. We probably say it once a month and have for all those years, where something will happen and I'll say, so Laura, it might rain. She'll go, okay, it might be sunny. And it just is just that change. You know, it's like, to Tracy's point, which way you go with it. But yeah, some people, their instinct, of course, is to look at the negative before they look at the positive, like what might go wrong as opposed to what might go right. But it doesn't mean you can't look at what might go right. It just means that it's not your instinct to do that. But now that you know what your instincts are, you can you know, choose to say, well, I'll focus on what might go right. At the end of the day, not only is it, you know, I see some of the chat about the assumptions or the imagination we're attaching to it. I'd say one of the most powerful principles I ever learned and embraced is that life is perfect. You know, life is happening the way it's meant to happen for you right now. And more importantly, what I've learned, what I would add to that is you actually designed it for yourself. And I find that really powerful, that what's happening now, even falling off a roof or whatever it is that's happening, running late for something, like Steve being on a train today, wherever we are, whoever we're with, whatever's happening is because it's meant to be. And more importantly, we designed it. So what that allows you to do is, instead of being upset by it, you can just get curious about it. You know, and it's like, okay, so like my sound system in the house wasn't working on Saturday night when I had a function on, and I really wanted it for a particular situation. And at the time it was really frustrating, but a fallback for me was to sort of go, okay, so this is meant to be, you know, it wasn't in my plan, but it's obviously meant to be, or it wouldn't be happening. So go with it. And I think the more we can get to that place of acceptance, self-acceptance, as well as acceptance of life, as opposed to wanting to change everything, the easier it is to get to a place of happiness and fulfillment and contentment. A friend of mine who's about 90, coming up 91, I always thought fulfillment was the goal, you know, being really fulfilled. And he said contentment. At 90 years of age, it's contentment. And I thought that was a really, maybe it's both, you know, I'm not arguing it, but I thought it was a really cool thing, that if you can be at peace with yourself and about what's going on, that really is a cool value to have.
Yeah, Paul, I'm just reminded of thinking of my 6 this morning is growing to an 8 already, but I'm just thinking of a saying that's really great, is we create our own reality.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Isn't that the truth? Guys, I'm just conscious of how quickly this morning's disappearing. It's a wonderful conversation. Is there anything from last week that anyone has hanging over, that, like, you know, a debrief on the interview, anything you either got from it or you've used from the interview, or how it impacted you, that you'd like to share, or any questions? I just wanted to allow a few minutes to have a little post-mortem on last week, if it was on people's minds.
Okay, there's your answer.
Great. Let's move on. Let's move on. Just letting people get off mute. Let's move on to questions on people's minds, like topics you might want to talk about. So, Greg, you raised one, I think, and then Judy. Have we dealt with yours, Judy, now with some of the other conversation, or is it still unanswered?
I think it's still unanswered.
Okay.
Can I just give you one quick one? And I don't know, it might be a little bit flippant, Judy, but for really important TV shows with technology today, record them and watch them uninterrupted. You can fast forward through the ads. We do, and I honestly, we do it like there's a couple of series that we're watching at the moment, and and my wife's not a use complete, she's a void, but we both get really frustrated having to sit through ads. So what we do is we record it, then we have a time Sunday afternoon, we actually sit down and watch it then completely uninterrupted, and that's our time. So don't know if that'd work, but it might help.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you.
Can I just say real quick, because I think it's so funny when we talk about the opposite ID, right? Is like when commercials come on, I'm like, what can I get done in this time? Like, it's actually so exciting because I'm like, how much can I get done before the show starts again? Can I unload the dishwasher? Can I make this? Can I do the laundry? Like, how much can I get done? So I think it's just, again, it's so interesting how our drives are always there. Like, I love commercials because it allows me to like get a whole bunch of stuff done before the show continues.
Absolutely. I have to just jump on that, Tracy. I never drink enough water. And so when I'm watching TV, every time there's a commercial, I get up and go get a glass of water. And I'm like, whew, good reminder, right?
It's like all the avoid completes and improvise just jump to action then. They're almost like, whoa, this is... All right. So Greg, can you, for those who maybe weren't on the call, can you just remind what your question was around the 3756 and the verifiers?
I'd like to defer and go to Judy if you don't mind, given the time. I think that she's we can get a better value. I can save that for another time. It's an intellectual deep dive more than a crucial issue.
Okay, great.
If I remember correctly, because it was the email that I sent to Ian, wasn't it? Yes, it was about something about men and women communicating differently or the same or something like that. Is that correct?
I was about how many, yes, it was around the emotions of it, but no, I meant with what you raised earlier today when you talked about the interruptions and how your energy shifts. Has that been dealt with for you? Because you said, well, I've given you the gold, but now what do I do with that? Has that been covered for you?
Yes, and the reason it's covered and the reason I am where I am at an 8 today is because of these webinars and the group every week.
Thanks, Judy. Thank you.
That's why I am where I am.
Good on you. I think it's wonderful that you're still as curious to keep learning with, everything you've already learned. You're like a sponge that's just wanting more and more. Kudos to you.
Okay, then. Quick boss 3746. All the rest of his team, high yellow and down and high verify up. He's got actually a 1 in yellow, one of the guys. And wonderful group of guys. And all men on this team, particularly, they're in manufacturing of very fine, high medical, implants, ear implants. So they're the manufacturing team. And at one point yesterday, we go through, we're doing the summary and so forth, and they go, Greg, is there any evidence in ID that Nick shouldn't be our boss? It's like with the 3746. And being a 3746, of course, he laughed like me. Like he didn't take any offense to it at all. And he goes, I ask myself that question every day, right? And they're going, yeah, this isn't funny. It's like, and part of it was his apparent flippancy and his apparent, yeah, look, she'll be right because he's, bloody 3 down and verify, right? It's like, we'll work it. It'll be okay. It'll be okay on the day. They're going, people can die, And so we thrashed it out. And I just thought, if that was you and you got that question, kick around, what would you tell the up verifies down improvises about the gift this guy brings? That's where I went. I'm tipping my hand here. I went to what he does bring rather than what he doesn't bring, right? And what they bring. And the idea was to go, and the conclusion at the end of it, they went, wow, we need each other. And thank God he's the boss and not one of us, because we wouldn't get anything done. It'd be all too over-engineered. So I'll cheat and go forward to where it finished. But what's your reaction to, you come up with someone going, that ID can't do this, and it's usually the up verifies down improvisers who have a concern about it.
Are you asking me or asking the class?
I'm throwing it to the class. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I can cheat to this one, Greg. I'm actually part of a team, and the team lead is actually the same or similar profile with a bunch of verifiers. So we have that very situation in the group that I'm in my project. And, you know, we did the ID for the team, and I think there was some real light bulb moments. But one of them was that Nick, our team leader, he brings a level of empathy that a bunch of verifiers typically don't have. He's able to listen to the whole team without judgment and actively listen. And I think sometimes verifiers struggle with that. And I know it's something that I've got to practice as a deliberate habit. And I think some of my colleagues that are all verifiers are in that same boat. He brings a level of empathy, but also as an improviser, he brings vision. He brings a lot of vision to that team where we get very pigeonholed because we are so focused on our remits and whatever. And Nick brings a level of vision across the whole team that we potentially don't see because of our use, verify, avoid, improvise. We're looking for the risk in things all the time. I also think Nick needs us. So if he didn't have us as verify and avoid, improvise, he would potentially miss that. He'd miss the risk. He'd also miss some of that process discipline around creating lists and procedures and making sure there's always purpose to things. So it's to me, it's a real synergy having those two drives, one in the leadership role and the others as part of the team. Thanks.
I'll add a couple of things to this. I think it's a really important call out, Greg, and a great case study we can learn a lot from. Verifiers, it's one of the both the strengths of the verified drive and a shortcoming of it is that they tend to value themselves, let alone other people, based on their expertise, and the expertise is around problem solving. So when someone, normally you think that if I'm going to learn from someone, if someone's going to be my boss, that's because I'm going to learn from them and I'm going to learn more about this skill or this expertise that I need to have. So if I was a young engineer and Grant as my verified boss was my, was my boss, then because he's got more knowledge than me, more experience than me, understands all the nuances. Yes, I'm going to learn from him because he's like the guru. That's what you look up to. So when we tend to think hierarchically, which verifiers do, about looking up to, we tend to think we're looking up to them for more skill. But if I'm now a seasoned engineer and my boss is not going to be the provider of that expertise, the default instinctive reaction is, well, then what's his value to me? Or what's her value to me? They don't have that. But it's because of the very narrow lens that the verifier is looking through. If instead we want someone who can build a team and their skill and their experience or their talent is in being able to get people to work together and be much more of a team and to expand horizons that give us all individual growth. I mean, that's a dimension of value that the verifiers aren't even looking for. And probably my trump card would be around collaboration, because what I would say to the verifiers is, if we've got a problem to solve, what's your instinctive reaction? And the instinctive reaction is to pick up the pen and get a piece of paper and think, right, how do I solve this problem? Whereas the instinctive reaction of the avoid verifier is, now who do I know? Who do I know? Who do I reach out to? And just that instinctive difference to me just makes the point in a categorical sort of way that just goes like, okay, that's why that person is our boss, because they're not going to solve the problems. They're going to let us do our job. They're going to empower us to do that, but they're going to open up new horizons for us and get us working with each other. And we would never do that on our own.
Yeah.
I think that's really
Paul, it's like you were in the room, because that's where we got to. They're so cellular in what they're doing, and the boss is going, who else can? Because we came up to a real good thing, that the clash that happens between similar drives, particularly to verify, is that they have the same tools they're using to push their point, so no one's actually going to win, and so it goes round and round. And the other thing is that they have this sense of my right is the right. And he's got no ranking on it. He's got no one wins or doesn't win. So he says, he's the one that's the voice that says, what's our right? What's the bigger right? And he's got no attachment to, he doesn't have a horse in the race. And so he brings an overview to it, and they realize that without him, they would be continually re-verifying each one of their own rather than what we came with. What's our collective right? And that's what he reminds them to do, because he's got no emotion in the game, and he has to battle against looking too flippant or not serious enough to them, because you don't understand how dangerous this is with the down yellow. And he goes, it's so dangerous that we need a calm head. What can we do together to fix it? So they wound up coming away going, oh, we couldn't do this without him, and he couldn't do it without us.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, thank you. So,
Paul, I've got a very similar situation. I did a team debrief on ID the other day, and the team leader or the business owner is a 4457, and all the others are high verify, high complete, and so they all sort of went, oh wow, look at all us, and then look at her, and even the team leader was like, yes, I'm out here doing this, but the power of it was she's the one that goes out and gets all the business and creates the opportunities, and then she's got the team that are there doing the work. It's a marketing digital agency business. So everybody ended up going, wow, what a fantastic team we are, and how awesome our leader is, because she can go out and get all this business for us and keep us going. So it was very cool.
Awesome.
I was going to add, so I think all of those are the yes, all of that. And one of the questions you asked, Greg, was how would you do it, right? And I think there's a maybe nuance in the approach, right? And so I think one of the things I've learned over time is, because I kind of know the answer with ID, I want to just tell them, like, here's how it would play out, and here's his strength, and this is the talent. And I think when you're talking to a group of like Joe and I, like, that is the approach to take, or Ilona is like, just tell them what all the stuff is, and they'll be like, thank you. But I think when you're working with verify, avoid, improvise, part of the importance in how you do it is to put it back on them, right? Because if I say it, it's not true. But if I say, well, tell me how this plays out. What are the talents here? What have you noticed? What would it be like without him? Where are his strengths? Then they tell me, and we get to the same outcome, but because they've told me, it's correct, and they believe me, right? Because I haven't said anything. So I just think there's an importance in how you approach verify, avoid, improvise, and how you help them work through something to get to the answer themselves, as opposed to telling them the answer, which won't get us as far.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the trick I actually used was, I said, let's reverse it. You guys are the boss, and you got a whole bunch of Nicks being the workers. And it didn't take but 10 seconds. I go, oh God, no. And so because they were so verified, I just gave them a problem to solve. And that was the way I engaged them. And the problem is, how do you engage others? And the big thing that they don't do is get buy-in from others. They just give solution. But the formula now is, it's not done till they buy it. Nick helps you sell it. And so I always throw them a problem, because don't tell a verifier what to do.
Yep.
Can I just add in there, it's Gail again. What I find, because of my 4 and my 2, I know the answer. I don't even have to go through a process. The question comes up, the answer's there. But that doesn't work, because if I jump in and say, oh, well, this is what we've got to do, everyone just looks at me. And because I'm an accountant and I work in complete verify land and low improvise, it's really quite, I've learned, I just go, okay, well, how's about we cover this in our meeting next week, which gives them all time to think about it. And they all then come back, maybe not with the right answer, but I can then tweak it going, well, from my experience, or when we did this, we tried this 10 years ago, or whatever it might be. And we always end up in the right place, and they think it's their answer. And for me, that works really well, but I appreciate other people don't have that same instant knowing and, feeling below the surface, and then being able to use the improvise and low complete as well. But it really, really works. They think it's their answer, not mine.
Thanks, Gail. Hey guys, just as we wrap for today, one of the things I'm glad I just remembered to mention was we have been building a certification program, which is an online program that will be delivered virtually rather than people attending live, which makes it much more universally available to everybody. But if anyone is interested in that program, Tracy and Ian and a couple of others have been working on the build of it all, the design and build. And we're having the first one in February next year, Trace, is that right?
March now, Paul. We've just moved it to early March. Yep.
March.
So yeah.
Some of you have asked. Oh, there's Vera waving. Hello, hey Vera. Some of you have been asking, you know, can we sort of do a more intensive certification on this, or people who might want to go through a program like that. So that will be available as of March next year, and we'll be, publicising more about it, particularly as we start up into 2021. But I wanted to let you guys know, given this is the masterclass, that is ready to roll as from March. So if it does interest you, or people that are potentially interested in doing something like that, reach out to Ian. He can send you the material for it, and we can start taking the registrations.
Fantastic.
All right, guys, thanks for being on the call today. It's been a great discussion. I love some of the examples and the war stories. Thanks for all contributing. You make it special each and every week. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure you do too. Have a wonderful day today, and we look forward for more of a Christmas conversation. It's going to be about drive and behaviour, but with some real fun applications next week. I'm sure you'll find it both insightful, but certainly a lot of fun. Have a great week. We'll hopefully see you next week.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Cheers. See you guys.
See ya.